Hello and welcome. You already know what time it is, because the Mastodon is gonna go mano a mano with the champ. And I do appreciate you coming to watch. I appreciate the views as always. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Let's get right into this tremendous SummerSlam card and kick into fourth, fifth, sixth gear for this one, ladies and gents. I'm excited. I'm excited. I hope you are too. And kicking it off, none other than Jerry Lawler. In prior videos, I had mentioned on one of the super cards, I was unable to have the match between Lawler and Rude. Rude had attacked Lawler prior on television, and now Lawler is finally, he has like a pay-per-view in which he gets to face him, sort of like a national stage, although TVs are a great opportunity, but you know, there's nothing like pay-per-view. That's why the greats, that's where they make their money, and Lawler knows that just as well as anyone. But first match of the night will be Warrior and the Barbarian. Quite frankly, this did about as well as I expected it to do. Big win for the Warrior. Barbarian is definitely the better of the two so far, and statistically, attribute-wise, yeah, that's probably the same as well. Warrior might be a little bit more entertaining, but in-ring Barbarian has the edge. Whether this will be the last we see of these two, I'm not sure. Honestly, you know, it came down to look, you know, and it's kind of the battle of the brutes. Barbarian is new, and you know, to get on SummerSlam only a few months after debuting, even if it's a loss in the opener, could be worse. A lot of people were left off this card. I was pretty strongly considering a pre-show, but I believe there's 14 segments, and 16 wouldn't have killed it, but sometimes I think less is more. So I just decided, hey, let's run with it, and this is a great opportunity for Warrior. He hasn't had that electric ride to the top just yet. And I'm not sure who I have to put him over to get that patented Warrior ride to being just this force of nature that gets over despite all of these negative traits in which he had in real life. I was a huge fan of Warrior when I was a kid. It's really his charisma more than anything. You know, and he had one tremendous match with Hulk Hogan, but besides that, it really didn't matter what he did in the ring. And here, I'm kind of waiting for that to take off, and, you know, slow builds are nice, but with Warrior, it was kind of just unnatural the way that he gained real-life popularity, and I'm kind of waiting on that. However, I will say, as we move on, I have had a lot of guys who just really caught fire that are very good in the ring and out. And it makes sense if you think about it. Here, Rude gets a huge win. Rude is kind of in that category, although it's been a slower build for him. Hopefully, going over Lawler at SummerSlam will be a big victory for him, perhaps. We will plant the seeds for a Rude Warrior match at next SummerSlam. Who knows? They're definitely in similar enough situations to where, with a year build, that could be a pretty marquee match, much the way it was in real life. However, big win for Rude. He isn't one of those guys. I would say Bret Hart, certainly, although he had a very prolonged tag push. Sting, Vader, Misawa, and I'm definitely forgetting probably a couple, but they are just like completely stacked statistically, who really were able to pick up popularity in a fiery way, in a very palpable way. And I'm glad that they did. Moving forward, we're going to have a segment here. Magnum TA calls out Bret Hart on TVs. There was, I think, 6 televisions in between King of the Ring and SummerSlam. So I had a lot of time to tell some stories, to start some feuds, to build those feuds, to what I would say is probably the second biggest pay-per-view of the big four. It's arguable, obviously, but I think it is the second biggest. Bret Hart attacked him. He kind of is realizing he needs to start scratching and clawing his way into prevalence in the singles ranks. Magnum is someone who doesn't want to kind of lose that status that he had built in Jim Crockett Promotions, making the jump. We kind of saw with Harley Race, he did maintain it, but at the same time, you really could argue that his success wasn't quite as strong, despite the fact that, as a performer, he killed it. He knocked it out of the park. But title-wise, Harley hasn't really attained the same heights. Magnum knows that, it could be a slippery slope if he starts to lose to the people who are starting to climb up the card. He could easily be a stepping stone. So he's got that in the back of his mind. And he picks up the win, and honestly, Bret was the one to carry the card, or the match, rather. They didn't click. Again, this is just a fatal flaw in my booking, and luckily it was mid-card, because otherwise this really could have hurt the SummerSlam card a lot. And I did toil with the idea, at least in my head, of, well, do I put this where the Lawler Rude match is? And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go with it. They have bad chemistry, and that's going to hurt every single time. But, what I did decide, what was the deciding factor ultimately, was I figured Magnum needs a big win on pay-per-view, and Bret has become one of those competitors where a win over him has a lot of meaning. He is a former tag champ, and while the tag titles probably get bounced around the most out of the heavyweight, IC, and tag, it's still one of those titles where if you've won it, you are very likely to be in the WWF Hall of Fame. And that title will be on the line next, actually. And here, huge for Magnum, and he'll likely get a title shot of some sort in the future coming out of this win over Bret Hart, who was a former IC contender himself. Then, as stated earlier, the tag titles are on the line, and the fabulous Freebirds win those titles here. Demolition have been on a super streak, so to speak. They had a pretty long run, 10-plus defenses. I believe they actually tied the Road Warriors for the most title defenses in one reign. I believe it is 14, and this would have been their 15th had they retained here. But look at these performance ratings. I mean, Hawk and Animal right on their tails, so to speak. Demolition, not too shabby as well. Obviously, Smash is a little bit lagging as far as everyone else, but man, it's about as good as I expected. I thought it might honestly be a little bit higher, but this is a story that we've been telling for quite a while, and now we're getting some form of payoff here at SummerSlam. Although I will say, I would expect probably more matches moving forward. Demolition, they did lose. They were the champions. Rematch clause will come into effect. Also, the Road Warriors had been the number one contender, even as far back as going into the last pay-per-view. And they drew with Demolition, and then they got their rematch in a triple threat. So there's some controversy, as the UK fans might say. So, are we going to get singles matches coming out of this? Another three-way? Who knows? All we do know is that Terry Bam Bam Gordy gets a taste of the gold very, very quickly after making his presence known in the WWF, and Michael Hayes is now a champion as well. Now, Jimmy Jam Garvin was he was the X Factor, so to speak. He was the catalyst, is the word I was looking for, that allowed them to secure this tremendous victory for the fabulous Freebirds, and they are probably going to be the top team for as long as Bam Bam is on the roster. Then we move forward, and if you were looking at the card early on in the original screen, you might have seen that War Games has become a reality for the WWF, and it is debuting here on SummerSlam 88, which is very, very exciting. We have been telling a pretty good story as far as I'm concerned. DiBiase started the formation of the $1 Million Inc. by securing Harley Race's aid. Then Stan Hansen and Mr. Perfect became involved, attacking Hulk Hogan after a Mega Powers tag match. Then Hogan instituted or gained the support of his fellow friends Sting, Misawa, and Tito Santana in hopes of trying to face this $1 Million corporation. Then, after a bunch of attacks, promos back and forth, costing Sting the King of the Ring tournament, winning it for Vader, who also became a part of the corporation, they decided that War Games was the only way to settle the score, the war to settle the score, so to speak. And here we are at a bypass, and both captains, Hulk Hogan and Ted DiBiase, are cutting promos on the opposition. And let's jump right into it. The inaugural War Games, and Sting is the man who picks up the victory after making Mr. Perfect submit. And he had a pretty good performance rating. Hogan off his game, surprising. Rarely ever see him off his game or below a 90. Harley carried. Perfect, 79. Oh man, Stan Hansen got a major staph infection in this match. That's not good, folks. I'm not sure if he's going to be taking time off for that. It sounds likely. Harley Race and Ted DiBiase were the guys to top the match rating in this. Misawa steadily climbing upwards. I really want to see a big jump out of him. Um, I think I might need to push his or bump his push up. Perhaps that is what's capping him. Sometimes it's kind of unknown reasons. Perfect also, I think he has eaten too many losses. Creatively, I'm gonna have to shake things up with him to get him back on track. But oh man, always it's very, very promising to see Harley Race just continue to crank out steady production. And Ted DiBiase, I mean, was there ever a doubt? He's a made man, one of the few champions that I've had in nearly 2 years of in-game play. So Hogan as well, however, he had an off night, as it said. Hopefully Stan Hansen is able to recover and doesn't need to take too much time off. This $1 Million Inc. is really starting to crank up, and even though it looks like they're taking a step back now, moving forward, I think that I'm going to be able to really take the twists and turns that I need to tell a good story and get them to where they need to be. I mean, it's really the initial stages of them. These are the baby steps. They had one, a big one, over Hulk Hogan. They get the big win back. The baby faces get to celebrate here on SummerSlam. Now they have to reformulate a strategy since Hogan has friends. So it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward. And again, hopefully Stan Hansen isn't out for long. However, I think we could carry on without him if it's only a short time that he has to be out. Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, a fair play. I guess that's why he was lower. I had thought it was based off of perhaps a momentum thing, but that is a good point. War Games isn't going to be a great match for everyone, especially someone who's kind of a more technical mat-based wrestler or chain wrestler, like Perfect. Here, Adonis cuts a promo. He had been kind of bothering Jake the Snake. He, once he locks his eyes on someone, he generally doesn't let them go without some trouble in one form or another. And it culminated in Adonis attacking Jake and stealing his IC title. And on TV, I believe on the go home, the Snake said, "Look, I'm gonna beat you into oblivion, and then I'm gonna take my title back at SummerSlam." Here we are, and Adonis is donning the IC title as though it is his. Well, in a few seconds, or minutes rather, it is his now. Adrian Adonis wins his first IC title. And I feel like this was a big move. And I was thinking about this, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to pull the trigger on it. Because going into it, in full disclosure, when I created this feud, my initial intention was not to have Adonis win it. But he has become almost like a Bray Wyatt in this sim, where he gets in feuds. He might get a win. He might get a win over the course of a 3-match feud. But he's never won a title. He's never dominated a feud. Yet he continues to perform really well. And I felt like, for one, it's time that we really kind of give him the reward he deserves. And another reason, and this was probably the one that swayed me over, put me over the edge, was Jake. He had a tremendous run from WrestleMania 3 to WrestleMania 4. His entire build up to the title. He has faced a lot of adversity, but it's been just everything's been looking up for Millhouse. And now Jake is finally he's in a situation in which it doesn't look good for him. There was a word I was looking for, but it eludes me. He's in a compromised situation, so to speak. This guy who he probably didn't take seriously, which was maybe a perception I would want to give on television from the scenes. The stuff that Adonis had done was kind of silly. Like he was like, "Hey, look, take a picture with me, Jake. Will you sign my autograph?" Kind of like looking up to him like a false idol. But Adonis kind of wanted to prove, like he wanted to show his like arrogance, and like when Jake just kind of shooed him away, he said, "Okay, well, I guess I have to hit you over the head with this lesson." And he literally did. And he stole his title. And not figuratively, and not just for the week. He's completely stolen it now. And now it is his. And now Jake is going to have to continue to scratch and claw to get the title that he has proven that he cares a lot about. I mean, he's going to have to put himself through hell just to get back into a situation where he can challenge Adonis again, and he's going to have to come prepared, because if he doesn't, Adonis has proven time and time again that he is one of the top heels on the roster, and now finally he's got the hardware to prove it. So, and also, we have a few faces who we need to start giving title shots as well. We have a lot of faces. Magnum being one of them. Whether he's ready to take the IC title yet, not sure. But he is probably first in line after that win over Brett. So Adonis Magnum perhaps will be a match to look forward to on the next pay-per-view. But we have a lot of faces. Sting being one of them. Misawa being another, who really, they deserve title shots. And with Savage being the heavyweight and Jake being the IC, we were somewhat limited towards giving faces title shots. So this can also help alleviate that as well. Here we have Piper and Steamboat hyping up their rubber match on our last two pay-per-views. Well, not our last two, but in the last three, I believe. Because one, Piper challenged Savage for the title. This was the last pay-per-view, which is on my profile in the archives if you'd like to watch it, to get some analysis on that and also see some of the matches, all of the matches. Piper challenged. Came up short, obviously. Non-title match now with Steamboat. But prior to that, he had beaten Steamboat in a rematch to become the number one contender. And prior to that, Steamboat had defeated Roddy Piper. And the majority, or this stems from, rather, Steamboat, who had won a title shot, inserting himself in a Piper Savage match and making it a triple threat. Okay, so that's the crux of the argument. But then, them being tied 1-1, Steamboat's competitive nature and Piper basically being called out because he had been trying to back out of this match. He realized, well, there's not much for me to gain, until he was finally kind of backed into a corner and he said, look, I will face you if I get a title shot out of it. So now he has to win to get a title shot. And the same goes for Steamboat. And it'll be an Ironman match. And Steamboat crushes it. 3 falls to 2. And Steamboat had actually, I believe, faced Roddy Piper when he had the title. So this was probably over a year ago. and a little over a year ago. And he came up short in an Ironman match. And these guys have gone back and forth for as long as Piper has been a heel. They've put on tremendous matches. And honestly, couldn't think of a better co-main event than that. Piper crushed it. Steamboat performed well, as always. And now Steamboat is he's garnered himself a title match, which is pretty sweet. And now on to our main event. The champ, the king, Vader versus Savage in the main event. They had faced each other once, but now Vader has Bobby Heenan as his manager and the $1 Million Inc. backing him, giving him the money to train. But it just ain't enough because Savage makes it 5 defenses, and we got a 100 in the main event as he retains. Vader, full-fledged main eventer now. He is a full-fledged main eventer. He is one of the top heels in the company. And now Savage is really starting. He's going on a tear now in cementing himself as one of the best heavyweight champions. His run definitely rivals that of Piper's initial run, which was the best up until that point, and Hogan's second WWF title run as well, which is probably on, is level with Piper's run. I would give Piper's the slight edge just because it was longer. But Savage, man, he's really crushing the game right now. And Vader he is elevated to the tippy top. He's at the tippy top. I'm telling you. And he is almost getting over too fast. That's not a thing. I'm ecstatic about it. But it's like, I have so many people I want Savage to be the top guy, you know what I mean? But, Vader is going to need some accolades. And I'm going to try to slow build it. But he's a made man now, as far as I'm concerned. That King of the Ring, and then upping his push to main eventer, he's the man. We'll see whether he can continue this work rate with other workers. But, he has awarded himself to be in that situation where now he gets to go up against top talent because he can perform. He's one of, 6 people who have put on 100 rated matches. Andre, Hogan, Piper, Savage, maybe Steamboat. I'm not sure. Piper, he had, I think, 3, which is what makes his initial title run so great. So let's see what the card gets rated. I'm super happy. Really, the only negative would be Brett and Magnum's match, but it was not good chemistry, and it was still an 80. Nothing really ruined the card. This match I expected to not be great, and it wasn't even terrible. All in all, man, everyone knocked it out of the park. This was tremendous. One of the better SummerSlams I've had. It's always an event that I try to crush and always comes through. But what I am just so freaking excited about with this save so far is that it's a crop of young talent that is just all of them around the same time are starting to really elevate. And they are all on the cusp of basically they're ready to take spots here. And it's a roster ripe with talent because the Savage, Hogan, Piper, Steamboat, Roberts, Santana, you can throw him into the mix. that whole crop of guys, they are still in their prime. And there is a group of guys, Vader, Sting, Brett, Misawa. There's definitely more people. Perfect, I guess you could say, would be in there. Rude. All of those up-and-coming guys, they're on their way up, and they are ready. You know what I mean? I guess, and I should throw DiBiase in that crop with, I guess, Hogan as well. But that's enough jibber jabber from me. Thank you so much for viewing this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the flippity floop.